And the Erie Canal connected Albany to Buffalo, and Buffalo's on the Great Lakes. So the big deal there was that with the opening of the Erie Canal, the east coast of the country, and in fact the whole world, was connected to the interior of the United States by way of the Great Lakes. Because it's so important to Buffalo's history, I'm going to spend a little time talking about the Erie Canal, some background information. It was built between 1817 and 1825. It was 363 miles long, Albany to Buffalo, built entirely by manual labor. They didn't have any machinery. They had horses, they had blasting powder, but they didn't have any machinery of any kind. Huge undertaking.
Onto their back in a basket, if it wasn't bagged. Load the grain onto their back and maybe get 80 pounds of grain on their back, go up another ladder and deposit that grain in the barge or the holding center and get back in line. And this continuous line of stevedores was how a ship was unloaded. Well, our third amateur, really out of his league, he's a shop owner in Buffalo. He's a hat maker. He's a milliner, and he sells hats and clothing in Buffalo. But he's also got an investor's eye for things. And he says, geez, Buffalo should be unloading all the ships that are waiting. They should have a clear t-shirt that says something like, I smell Cheerios, or this place smells like Cheerios, or worse to that effect. And that's because downtown Buffalo very often smells like Cheerios. Grain elevator silos. And then they got Ferris wheel. They got a couple of carnival rides. That Ferris wheel sits on what I would call a modern grain elevator's foundation. There used to be an elevator there, and that's what the first floor looked like, or looks like in a modern elevator. They call that part of their complex. They call that stevedores that emptied the ships. They or their descendants would have been the scoopers. And they kind of kept quite a bit of a lock on things here on the Buffalo River for years to come. That still identifies as a maritime industry. Years later, an investor comes by, Richard Anderson, purchases the Columbia. He's got a very definite plan. Richard Anderson is going to rebuild the Columbia, take it to New York City, and run excursions out of Lower Manhattan. And those excursions would go by the Manhattan skyline up into the Hudson River Valley and make a U-turn in Lower Manhattan. And he'd have themes like a fine dining. The mystery boat's the Columbia. And Columbia was built in Detroit in 1902. And you got to keep going. And so for a 125-foot building at a foot an hour, it's going to take you 5 days to build that building. But that's the way it was built, is form up, or it's raised by jacks that are right in between the walls of the form. Imagine a couple hundred workers dragging up 100 jacks and lifting this huge form. Anyway, gets up to the top, disassemble the form, put a roof on it, and now you've got a grain set of silos that's going to last you forever. We see evidence of that. We know about the basement. We can see evidence of that. We know about the marine towers. This one's got 3 of them. I'm going to introduce something else. Up at the top, there's all those workhouses. That's what they call that. There's one that runs the whole length of the building, and there's a 5-story one that's that sticks up the river. But the Buffalo River and the industrial rivers of the country. You might have heard stories about the Cuyahoga in Cleveland, or about the River Rouge in Detroit, or the Illinois in Chicago, or I think maybe on the same list would be the East River in New York. Or, remember the song in Boston, Near My Home, that Dirty River, the Charles? So a lot of places were affected in the same way, and that was, they were polluted by industry and by the growth of the cities around them. And the harbor, this lighthouse was the entrance to Buffalo Harbor. This one was built in 1833, not long after the Erie Canal. It was preceded by a temporary one, and this canal says to the ship's captains, hey, over here for Buffalo Harbor. This is the entrance to Buffalo Harbor. Now, I told you all the ways that things see out here. And these long break walls, we're going to see one that goes 2 miles off to our left. And those break walls were built by the federal government. They go from the floor of the lake up to about 10 feet above the lake. And their purpose is to protect the shore from the winds and storms and currents of Lake Erie. And the area between the break wall and the shore, that's what we call our outer harbor. So if you hear the expression inner harbor and outer harbor, inner harbor is everything from the naval part inward, outer harbor is between the break wall and the shore. Now, it had been known as the Lighthouse Light for all these decades, but from 1958 to 1962, it was known as the leading lighthouse in Buffalo, because the Frontenac knocked it at a 15-degree angle, but it still operated. So for 4 years, Buffalo had this crooked lighthouse called the leading lighthouse in Buffalo. Then they solved the problem by building that gap that we just went through. And now the official Buffalo lighthouse, the